Hello and welcome to Radio Waves. I'm your host, Kris Poliquin, and this is a production of Red Apples Media. We're broadcasting out of WLBE Real Country, 790 AM out of Leesburg, Florida. And if you're watching us on television, you're doing so on Lake Sumter TV, Comcast Channel 13, Bright House 498, and CenturyLink Prism Channel 83. So today, I have invited a Orlando Sentinel columnist, Lauren Ritchie, to give us some of her opinions on some hot topics that are out and about and normal conversation nowadays. So, Lauren, thank you very much for coming on to the show.
It's my pleasure.
Good. It should be. I'm a pleasure to be around. All right. So let's start off with telling our audience a little bit about yourself and what your background is.
Oh, well, my background's so boring. I'm a 60-year-old woman. I'm originally from near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went to public schools until the last part of high school, and I went to a private prep school, which is why I'm a big fan of private schools. Went to Northwestern University, graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in journalism. Never did take math. I'm not exactly sure how I managed to get out of that, but it was good.
That's a whole other subject right
Exactly.
there. How do you get out of math?
I don't know. It was a math/science requirement, and I just kept taking things like rocks for jocks and, that sort of thing. And just started a newspaper career. It's what I always wanted to do from the time I was a kid. I never had a question. I never thought twice about doing anything else. It was always just to be a reporter.
Now, are you a reporter now?
Well, yes and no. All columnists are also reporters, but I'm now, my title is columnist, which is to say I'm an opinion writer. Okay. But that said, a lot of times I'll say that, and people will immediately assume that you just get to make this stuff up. But you don't. You actually have to use, real facts. And so you have to report it all out first, and then you form an opinion. You write it persuasively with the idea that you want to get people involved, you want them to react, and want people to start talking about what you think are important things in the community.
And I've been reading your columns. And
thank you.
That is, very welcome. And they're good. I'm not just saying that because you're in front of me. Although I could.
You could, but I can reach you from here. So.
Well, they're fantastic. They're the best I've ever read in my life.
Thank you.
But it's an interesting concept where, especially nowadays, where there's so much quote-unquote fake news or just, I don't know if I want to go so much as to say propaganda for people's ideas. But it seems like the line between journalism and opinions or facts and opinions are starting to get blurred.
Oh, not in real media, only in this fake crap.
Right.
That's all. I mean, if you want to read somebody's blog because their, 35-year-old son is working out of the second bedroom upstairs where he never comes out of, and he's going to write his opinion from there, you want to listen to that guy, yeah, your opinions and your facts are going to be blurred. But if you're talking to a real reporter who works for a genuine news outlet, the answer's no. We know the line.
Okay. Because there's a lot of talk about that, right? Or at least in the national news.
There is.
And even myself, I've seen some where they may be using the facts, but taking excerpts of statements and using it either for or against another individual. And it just seems like that's becoming, I don't want to say predominant, but more and more, it's just happening more and more often.
Well, Kris, you have to remember, reporters are not stenographers. If they were, they would just sit and take little notes all day long about what was said and put it out in its totality. The job of a reporter is to gather the facts, make decisions about those facts, the decisions that they think in their training and so forth are important and are relevant to the topic at hand, and present those to the reader in a cohesive, organized fashion. So in the sense that you get to decide as a reporter what's important, so I guess you can argue there's some opinion going on there just through those decisions.
Sure.
But are we just making this stuff up? Are we out here as reporters, working secretly for somebody else? Like, come on.
No. And that's not what I was getting at all. It just, I think that was interesting how you put it, is that there's still going to be some opinion in journalism. And
sure, there always has been and always will be. I mean, the point of what we do is to tell you what's important out there in your community. And simply by doing that, we're making a decision as to what's important.
Okay. So where do you see, okay, I want the whole fake news has still got me in my mind.
That's okay, go ahead.
Because it is, I'm over it, personally.
I'm so far. You have no idea how far over it I am. I mean, it makes me absolutely nuts when people start sending me stuff from The Blaze, for example, and a bunch of other stuff. These are not news outlets, folks. You need to think critically about news.
And that is the responsibility of the audience itself.
That's right, the consumer.
Right. We can't just take what's in any outlet, any media outlet, whether it be paper, magazine, radio, television. Take the facts, listen to the journalist or the reporter's opinion, but you gotta think on your own as well, and at least be able to read through the lines. I watch a lot of news on television, and I force myself to watch all the different channels. And when I say force, because there are some news channels that just really get under my skin. It's not even the news channels, more of the individuals. But I do that in order to hear, well, I'm going to use Fox News, fair and balanced. I can't rely on just them to be fair and balanced. I do that on my own.
Well, I would hope that you go beyond TV, because there's a huge element of entertainment to television. I mean, simply because of the media itself. There's just no getting away from it.
Right.
And to be honest, I don't watch television, period. So
Really?
I'm probably one of the few people in America today who does not watch television ever. I don't own one. I don't.
Wow.
Well, actually, I do own one. Come to think of it, it's in a closet. But I'm not going to turn on Fox. I'm not going to turn on CNN. I really don't need them to help me make up my mind and to understand what's going on. I am just wed to the written word.
Let me just ask you this then. Where do you get your news?
I read a real variety of stuff.
Okay.
But a lot of it's very standard, newspapers and other publications. There's, for example, it's not to say that it has to be printed in a paper. I mean, you look at a group called ProPublica, which is ProPublica it might be .org. I think it's ProPublica.org. It's a group of reporters who put together investigative series, and it's published only online. It's not, and there's plenty of video and so forth on it, but it's not published in a newspaper anywhere. But I'll tell you what, those people are extremely good.
Really?
And
okay.
I have a lot of trust in them.
Okay. Now, you brought up print.
Mm-hmm.
In today's age, where do you see the future for print? Do you see the future for print?
Because I should have paid you before this started not to ask me that question. It's gone.
We had an opportunity out front.
Dude, it's gone. It's gone. It's just, I don't see it lasting much longer. I think, the Orlando Sentinel's headed toward digital. Certainly digital's a big part of what we do. It's going to become a bigger part.
Well, it's just, I see it's quicker. You're right. If you want something,
that's right.
Some news, you want some information, it's right now. But I also think that's, well, I don't want to say it's a problem.
Well, it is a
because
problem.
it comes out, so much information comes out so fast that you don't often have the opportunity to let, I guess, facts settle before you start getting reports.
That's right.
And if you get an initial report, you could easily find 10 minutes later that, oh no, that was absolutely wrong.
I don't disagree with you. And it's just part of the culture of this country. This country wants what it wants, when it wants it, and it usually wants it right now.
Yes. And I was actually, for the second segment of the show, I would really like to start getting into some of your opinions on some of the hot topics in Lake County.
Sure.
And millennials is going to be one of the questions. I don't want to get into it right now because
Okay.
You're already like cringing, it seems. So
Well, I own one.
Okay.
She's 25.
so do I. 21.
Uh-oh.
And I tell you what, I see it every day. So, what do you think journalists need to be prepared for in the future?
I think they have to react quickly. I think they have to have extremely good judgment in terms of who they should be quoting, who they should. When you're at some kind of a news scene, it's very chaotic. News, by definition, is chaotic. And news, by definition, is generally not good. So you have to exercise a good bit of judgment in figuring out whether the people you're interviewing and you're gathering this news from are reliable. And I think increasingly judgment's going to become an important issue for reporters. The ability to communicate quickly, to put into words quickly and accurately what's going on, what you feel, what the sense of the scene is, and so forth. Those are things I think they'll have to do.
Okay. Now, we were talking earlier, and it depends on their opinion to a certain extent, but where does bias have a role in that?
Well, I think bias is just how you grew up. There's a really interesting, PBS.org is doing a survey right now, and it's all over Facebook, it's all online. And it asks you, are you in a bubble? And it tries to determine, it tries to tell you, like spit back at you, how much you're in a bubble by a whole series of questions that you answer. And they're all about how you grew up. Did you ever, did you hang around with anybody who smokes? Did you watch these television shows? Did you, was your family in this part of an income and so forth? And it just tries to tell you where you stand relative to the rest of the world. So essentially, it's an identifier of bias because the questions you ask are based upon how you were raised, how you grew up, how you live now, what your standards are, what your religion is, what your beliefs are. Those are all bias.
Okay. Now, and that makes total sense. And where was that?
It's on PBS.org.
I'm going to have to do that.
Just
for my own benefit.
And I was just shocked that I came out as close to I guess they consider it the general population, as I was, because I'm so unconnected with television and
Sure.
TV shows and movies, and I'm just really a cultural moron. But and part of it is that, so I think that's where.
Well, it's because you don't have a TV.
That's exactly it.
Well, Lauren, we need to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll get into some of the hot topics in Lake County.
Alrighty.
We'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back to Radio Waves. Again, I'm your host, Kris Poliquin, and this is a production of Red Apples Media. Today, we're speaking with Lauren Ritchie, columnist for the Orlando Sentinel. Before the break, we were talking about journalism and just in general, fake news, things of that nature. And you are, as you said in one of your columns, you are paid to write about your opinion and what a job that is. So I'd like to get into some of your opinions on some hot topics in our local community. One of which I'd like to kind of start talking about is maybe the house in Mount Dora. That seems to be kind of an uproar. The whole
Starry Night.
Starry Night.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because how people react to it. I mean, it certainly does prove that art is in the eye of the beholder, because you don't like it.
I do not.
And it doesn't bother me one way or another. I just It's that guy's house. Paint it how you want it.
And that's where I sit as well. Now, again,
Right.
I consider myself a man of principle, and that's my home.
Right.
I should be able to do whatever, as long as it doesn't injure, hurt, or affect other people.
Right.
Which also poses a question of maybe the other properties in that area where it could affect maybe property value or something along those lines. And I can kind of understand that, but at the heart of it, to me,
it's a property.
It's their
to me,
home.
it's a property rights issue. And
Yeah.
but I've also got a column that's coming out in the next. Okay, let me think. It's got to come out maybe this Sunday. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, because I write on such a wiggly schedule. It's hard for me to keep track of what's coming out when. But the column is just essentially another viewpoint, and it has nothing to do with whether you like Starry Night or hate Starry Night, which is. For people who haven't seen it, it's an artist's conception of, it's kind of a takeoff on Vincent van Gogh's masterpiece, Starry Night, and he's done it across a wall and in an entire house. So this has nothing to do with whether you like it or you don't. People who don't like the house kind of tend not to like murals at all, at least as far as my email goes. So I've actually written this column where a fella up in the Villages sent me an email saying, you should take a look at my daughter's house up in Michigan in a place called Ludington, Michigan. And so I took a look at the pictures he sent, and then I started looking up Ludington, Michigan. Well, they've embraced murals. They've got history murals. They've got murals of people who helped their town grow. I'm just typing along in the internet, and the next thing I know, it's like, here's a website for the top 10 mural painting companies in Ludington, and I'm thinking,
Painting
what?
companies.
Yeah,
Top 10.
Top 10 in Ludington, Michigan. A grand total of 8,000 people live there. Like, every single human being must be employed in painting murals in Ludington, Michigan. But it's just a interesting look, and that's what I try to do sometimes, not just persuade everybody all the time as to, here's what you need to think about this issue, but hey, here's a different thought. Here's a different way of looking at a mural. And these folks use these murals to persuade people to come to town, especially not in the winter, but in the summer.
Sure.
To come.
You did say
and
Michigan.
Yeah, I did, and it's in the cold part too. But people come, they take these little walking tours, they take little bike tours, they can join the Ludington Mural Society. I mean, it's hilarious. They've turned it into a business.
A theme. You want to look at murals? Go to this little town.
So sometimes we do that sort of thing, just throw it out there and say, here's something to think about.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And again, it's not my preference. But I do appreciate the value of art.
Okay.
Well, I like to think I do.
Just not on a house.
Maybe not on the house next door to me.
Okay.
But again, they're home as far as I'm concerned.
I gotcha.
So what other things are out there that, I don't want to say keeps you up at night, but that you have a very strong opinion on right now?
2 or 3 things are going on right now that bother me. The things that actually keep me up at night tend to be people related. We had a death in Carlton Palms, which is a facility for the most violent, the most troubled people who are disabled. And a lot of their diagnoses are both disabilities and mental illnesses. So you've got the double diagnosis, which makes these folks very difficult to deal with. But they've just had another death there. And it's not straight up and it's not straightforward. And the case is still open. It bothers me a great deal. I've called for that place to be closed before. I'm going to do that again in a column coming up. The last time it was a 14-year-old child who had been restrained all night long and throwing up all night long, and she died in the morning of a heart attack that was caused by dehydration.
Dehydration.
Yes, dehydration. And that should not happen in the United States of America. I mean, all it takes is, they pop a vein and put some water in there, basically.
Right.
And you're fine. And I've thought that, I live out in that area. I walk my dog there every day. I've seen the people that work there. I just wouldn't put a child in there. And this was a 26-year-old man who apparently had a head injury when he died. And the initial story out of Carlton Palms was that he was a self-harmer and had been banging his head against objects in a room. But the detectives didn't find blood on the objects in the room, didn't find blood on the floor, though they were told he was banging his head on the floor. And finally, it turns out that he was not actually banging his head right before he coded. So the investigation's trying to take a look at, what was he doing? How did he get this head injury? The autopsy has come back inconclusive. And I'll tell you what, they just need to close this place.
Wow. I haven't heard of that. And
well,
again, that's
it's developing, and you'll hear more about it. And I hope to write something about it within the next week or so. Other things that I worry about, the issue of homelessness bothers me right now.
Yeah.
We are a county of 320-some thousand people, and we do not have a single emergency homeless shelter. None. Zero. If you run into trouble and you've been evicted, you're a family, you're a single, no matter what, there is no place for you to go and spend a safe night and take a shower and get a hot meal. It doesn't happen here.
No, and there's a facility in Eustis that's
a
like a day.
That's a day facility, and there are plenty of transitional housing places. And the reason we've got all this transitional housing as opposed to emergency, quote, housing, is because a few years back, that's what HUD would fund. The flavor of the day was transitional housing. And now they've stopped funding those, and the flavor of the day is something called Housing First, which means that if you go to some emergency shelter somewhere, the first thing they're going to do is put you in a house. I wonder how that's going to work out for them.
Right.
I think maybe not so well. That we need an emergency shelter, and I'm not suggesting that we drag everybody and their brother who happens to be sleeping on Main Street in Leesburg out to sleep in emergency housing. I mean, this should be for people in real crisis who want the service, not for people who happen to be annoying you.
Right. It's not they don't get sentenced to the place,
Exactly.
but it's a shelter in the event of a hurricane, poor weather,
Exactly.
freezing conditions.
Yes. And for those who want to get out of this situation.
Right. Who genuinely have fallen upon
There are
hard
plenty of
times.
people who don't wish to come out of the tent in the woods. And
Right.
I think, you can only offer. And if they don't, they don't.
Right.
But there are still plenty of people who do and who just need the help.
Okay.
That one, and I'll tell you what else I want to talk about. What's going to happen on the south end of Leesburg, down around 470 and Highway 27. You know what's going on down there, right?
Oh, yeah.
They've got a new Villages. They've got another older subdivision that has been approved, but it's almost as big as what the Villages would build out to. It's called Secret Promise. It was back, about 2004, 2005, when Secret Promise kind of raised its little head and the city approved it. And right at the same, just about the time they were about to build, the bottom went out of the real estate market.
So do you think that would be a problem for Leesburg, or would it benefit them? Now, I know traffic will be just obnoxiously.
Horrendous.
Yeah.
No,
I travel on 441 daily. So.
Well, clearly there's going to have to be there's going to have to be more collector type roads. You can't just have a bunch of little neighborhood roads that spill onto either 470 or 441 or 27.
Sure. Yeah.
So that'll have to be done. But the real question is a cultural change.
No, that's true.
What's going to happen?
Yep. Well, more parties. I've been to the villages.
But only if you're 55 and older.
But only if you're 55 and older.
Thank God I'm 60 this year.
Well, Lauren, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank you again for coming onto this show and kind of sharing a little bit of your insight on the air versus just a paper column.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, that does it for this episode of Radio Waves. We'll see you next time.